They dragged him out by his collar. Just like that. Security guards, 2 of them. Their hands were clamped onto his shoulders as if he were a common criminal caught red-handed. The entire ballroom went silent. 300 people, dressed in designer gowns and $10,000 tuxedos. All of them just stood there, watching. They were watching a 61-year-old man in a faded janitor's uniform being thrown out of the building like garbage. At the center of it all stood Marcus Hale, smirking. "Get this garbage out of my event." The man being dragged, he didn't resist. He didn't even argue. He just kept his head down, gray hair disheveled, wearing a uniform that hung wrong on shoulders that used to fill custom-tailored suits. But look at his hand. On his finger, a platinum wedding ring, scratched, worn thin, the kind of ring you only get after 40 years of marriage, the kind you're still wearing 6 months after your wife dies, because taking it off, it feels like losing her all over again. Nobody in that room noticed the ring. They just saw a nobody, a janitor who had wandered somewhere he didn't belong. What they didn't see was the way his hands were shaking, and it wasn't from fear. No, it was from a rage he'd been swallowing for 6 long months. "You don't belong here," Marcus announced to the room. "This is what's wrong with this city. People who don't know their place." And the man being thrown out, Vincent Cross, the actual founder of the company Marcus was currently trying to steal, he made a decision right then. It wasn't about revenge. Not anymore. It was something much colder. It was the truth.
His name was Vincent Cross, but for 6 months, he'd been Vince, the janitor. 42nd floor, night shift, 11 to 6. He didn't take the job because he needed the money. He took it because he needed to stop thinking. The house was too quiet. Margaret's coffee mug still sat on the counter. Her side of the bed still smelled like lavender lotion. Every morning he'd wake up, and for 3 seconds he'd forget she was gone. Then he'd remember. The grief hit him fresh every single time. "You need to do something, Dad," his daughter Rachel had told him. "Sitting in that house alone, it isn't healthy." "I'm fine," he'd lied. But he wasn't fine. 40 years of marriage, 3 months of watching cancer eat her alive. Then nothing. Just silence and the suffocating weight of a life that no longer made sense. So he took the job. Something physical, something that required his body but not his brain. Emptying trash, vacuuming carpets, mopping floors. Simple, repetitive, mindless. Until the night he saw the folder on Marcus Hale's desk. Hostile Takeover, Cross Medical Group. His company. The one he and Margaret had built together brick by brick. The one Marcus Hale was currently trying to steal while Vincent was too buried in grief to fight back. Vincent stood there, trash bag in hand, staring at that folder. And for the first time in months, he felt something other than numbness. Anger. Cold, clarifying, purpose-giving anger. He started paying attention after that, listening through closed doors, reading documents left on desks, piecing together Marcus's strategy. It wasn't a plan, not at first, just noticing, watching, learning. But then Rachel called. "Dad, we're in real trouble. The board is turning. Marcus has gotten to them somehow. I don't know how to fight this." There was fear in her voice. Her brilliant, capable daughter, the one who would take it over when he couldn't, was scared. And Vincent realized right then, grief had made him passive. It made him believe that bad things just happen and you just have to survive them. But Marcus Hale wasn't cancer. He wasn't an unstoppable force of nature. He was just a man. And men could be stopped. Vincent just had to figure out how. Vincent had lost everything 6 months ago, but it wasn't the company. Cross Medical Group was still standing, still profitable, still carrying his name in gold letters on a building in Midtown. No, he'd lost Margaret. 40 years of marriage. 40 years of waking up to the only person who truly knew him. Margaret had believed in him when the company was just a scribbled note on a napkin. Then came the cancer. Aggressive, merciless. Vincent had sat by her hospital bed every single day, watching machines breathe for her, listening to doctors speak in those gentle tones about comfort. The company had become background noise. His daughter, Rachel, 34 and brilliant, had stepped up. "Dad, just focus on Mom," she'd said. "I've got this." And she did have it, until Marcus Hale started circling. Audio, the low, dangerous growl of a predator fading into a news broadcast soundbite. Hostile takeover, that's what the suits called it. Aggressive acquisition, but what it actually meant was that Marcus was a vulture. He was buying up shares, pressuring the board, spreading rumors of instability. He was trying to strip Vincent's life's work for a fraction of its value. Rachel called him 2 weeks after the funeral. "Dad, we're in trouble. Hale Industries is moving too fast. They're threatening investigations. They're turning our own board members against us." Vincent stood in his empty kitchen. Margaret's coffee mug was still on the counter, her glasses still on the nightstand. "What do you need me to do?" he asked. "I don't know," she admitted. And for the first time in 30 years, Vincent heard fear in his daughter's voice. "He's destroying us, Dad, and he's doing it legally. I can't fight someone who owns half the city." Vincent looked at his reflection in the window. 61 years old, gray, tired, hollowed out by grief. "But not broken," he said. "I'll handle it." "Rachel, you can't just—" "I'll handle it, Rachel. Trust me." Audio, the sound of a phone hanging up, followed by a quick, sharp transition beat. He made 3 phone calls. By the next morning, he had an interview. Janitor, night shift, Hale Industries, the executive floor. "You're overqualified," the hiring manager said. He was confused why a man with an MBA wanted to mop floors. "I just need something simple," Vincent replied. "I'm grieving. I just need to move my body and stay busy." They hired him that afternoon. And for 6 months, Vincent Cross, founder and CEO of a $340 million empire, emptied Marcus Hale's trash. And he listened. And he learned. And he waited.
The invitation had been an accident. Vincent found it in Marcus's trash on a Tuesday night. Thick cardstock, gold embossed lettering. Hale Industries annual charity gala. Black tie, $10,000 per plate. He pulled it out and smoothed the crumpled edges. The gala was this Saturday, the exact same weekend the board was meeting to vote on the hostile takeover. Vincent was smart. Host a massive charity event, wine and dine the major players, make them feel like gods. Then, when everyone was drunk on champagne and self-congratulation, push through the final votes. Vincent stared at that invitation for a long time. He could show up. He could reveal himself right then and there, confront Marcus publicly. But that wasn't enough. He didn't just want to stop Marcus. He needed Marcus to destroy himself. He needed him to reveal exactly who he was in front of everyone who mattered. So Vincent made a plan. He called a contact, an old friend who owned a security company, someone who owed Vincent a favor from 20 years back. "I need something," Vincent said, "something that's going to seem crazy." "Vincent, what are you doing?" "Something I should have done months ago." Saturday evening, Vincent stood in his apartment staring at his reflection. He'd shaved, combed his hair. He was wearing his wedding ring, the platinum one Margaret had given him on their 40th anniversary, just 3 months before she died. But over his pressed white shirt, he wore the janitor's uniform, the one with the name tag that said Vince instead of Vincent Cross. His daughter called. "Dad, where are you? The board vote is Monday. We need to finalize the strategy." "I'm working on it," Vincent said. "Working on what? Dad, this isn't the time for games." "Rachel, do you trust me?" Silence. Then quietly, "Always." "Then trust me now. Monday morning, everything changes." At 7:30 p.m., Vincent walked through the service entrance of the Four Seasons. Security at the door glanced at his uniform, saw the Hale Industries logo, and waved him through. Nobody looks twice at a janitor. He slipped through the kitchen entrance, past the catering staff setting up champagne towers, and into the ballroom where 300 of Manhattan's elite were gathering. Crystal chandeliers, an orchestra playing something classical, women in gowns that cost more than Vincent's monthly salary, and at the center of it all, holding court like royalty, was Marcus Hale. Vincent watched him laugh, watched him shake hands, watched him play the role of the generous philanthropist. Then Vincent stepped into the crowd, and he waited to be seen. Marcus saw him at 8:17 p.m. Vincent had been standing near the silent auction table, staring at a photograph of Margaret. It was a donated item, private tour of Cross Medical Research Facility. His facility, his wife's legacy, being auctioned off at a Marcus Hale charity event. "Excuse me." Vincent turned. Marcus stood there, champagne in hand, surrounded by 3 board members and a woman young enough to be his daughter. "You're not supposed to be here," Marcus said. His voice was polite but firm, the voice of a man used to correcting mistakes. "I'm working," Vincent said quietly. "Working?" Marcus looked him up and down. His eyes paused on the wedding ring. "In that uniform, at your age? This is a black tie event. You should be in the back, where people don't have to look at you." One of the board members laughed. Pause. Vincent felt something crack in his chest. Not anger, something colder. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," Vincent said. "The only misunderstanding," Marcus interrupted, louder now, "is whatever made you believe you belonged in this room." He turned to his audience. "Look at this, a man old enough to retire, wearing a janitor's uniform to a charity gala. Probably thought he could sneak some leftover food, maybe steal a bottle of wine." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Vincent's hands clenched, the wedding ring pressed into his palm. Margaret's voice echoed in his head. "Don't let them see you break." "Sir, I'm just doing my job." "Your job," Marcus repeated, to contempt dripping from every word, "is to clean toilets. That's all men like you are good for. Manual labor, following orders, staying invisible." He stepped closer, into Vincent's personal space. "Let me guess, you had dreams once, right? Maybe you were going to be something, build something, but life didn't work out. So now you're here, old, alone, pushing a mop at an age when you should be retired." Vincent's throat tightened, because Marcus didn't know how close to the truth he was. Old, alone, pushing a mop. That was exactly what Vincent had become. "I think you should leave," one of the board members said. Vincent recognized him, Peterson. He'd known the man for 15 years, but Peterson didn't recognize Vincent. Pause. Marcus snapped his fingers. "Security, remove this man, and make sure everyone sees him leave. Let it be a lesson." As the guards grabbed Vincent's arms, Marcus called out to the room. "This is exactly what happens when people forget their place, when they think they deserve more than they've earned." The crowd applauded, and Vincent, being dragged toward the exit, humiliated in front of 300 people, felt doubt creep in for the first time. What if this didn't work? What if showing up had been a mistake? What if grief had made him stupid, reckless, desperate? Margaret would have told him to be smarter, to think it through. But Margaret was gone, and Vincent was alone in this. They threw him out the back entrance. Not gently. Security guards, two young guys who probably made $12 an hour, pushed Vincent through the kitchen, past the startled catering staff, and out onto the loading dock where the trash compactors hummed. "Stay out," one of them said, not unkindly. "Boss is in a mood tonight. You don't want to push it." Vincent straightened his uniform. Understood. Vincent stood in the alley. A cold March wind cut through his thin janitor's shirt. From inside, he could still hear the music, the laughter, the muffled sound of Marcus Hale's voice giving a speech about charitable giving. His phone buzzed. "Rachel." "Dad, where are you?" "Vincent, where I need to be. Trust me." "Rachel, there are people arriving. Black cars. Looks official. Dad, what's happening?" Vincent looked at his watch. 8:43 p.m. Right on schedule. 3 days ago, Vincent had made a final decision. He'd copied every document, every email, every incriminating piece of evidence he'd collected over 6 months. Bribes to board members, fabricated violations, insider trading, threats. And he'd sent it all to one address. Not the police, not the SEC, not even his own company. He'd sent it to Hale Industries' legal department with a simple note. Thought the board should know what their CEO has been doing in their name. Marcus had built his empire on the loyalty of 12 people, the Hale Industries board of directors, people he'd handpicked, people who trusted him. Vincent was about to show them exactly who they'd been trusting. His phone buzzed again, an unknown number. "We're here. Webb." Harrison Webb, chairman of the board, 15 years of service to Marcus Hale. Vincent had gambled everything on one single assumption, that the board valued their own reputations more than their loyalty to Marcus, that when faced with evidence of crimes committed in their names, they would choose self-preservation. Vincent texted back, "Ballroom, 2nd floor, he's giving a speech." He walked back around to the front entrance of the Four Seasons, a different doorman now, a shift change. "I'm meeting someone," Vincent said calmly. The doorman barely looked at him. "Go ahead." Vincent walked through those polished brass doors, back into the building he'd been thrown out of 20 minutes ago. But this time, he wasn't alone. The Hale Industries Board of Directors entered the ballroom at exactly 9:03 p.m. 12 people. Not Vincent's people, Marcus's people. The executives he'd handpicked to run his empire. The board that controlled $8 billion in assets. They moved as a unit, purposeful, grim. Harrison Webb led them, 67 years old, silver hair, 20 million in stock. His face looked like carved stone. The ballroom noticed. Conversations faltered. Marcus Hale, mid-sentence with a city councilman, looked up. His face went carefully blank. Webb walked directly to him. "Marcus," Webb said, his voice carried across the dead quiet room. "We need to talk, now." Marcus's smile was tight. "Harrison, this isn't really the time." "I'm not asking," Webb said. The other 11 board members formed a semicircle. Betrayal, anger, fear. "You know exactly what this is about," Elizabeth Chen said. She held up a tablet. "We received a package 3 days ago, documentation of systematic fraud, bribery, corporate espionage, all traceable directly to you." The ballroom was silent. You could hear a pin drop. "We've verified it," Webb interrupted, his voice cold as ice. "Every document, every bribe you paid to Cross Medical, every safety violation you invented, every illegal trade." He stepped closer, into the light. "You've been committing federal crimes using our company, making us accomplices to fraud." Marcus's face flushed red. "You're overreacting. This is how acquisitions work." "No," Elizabeth snapped. "Everyone doesn't, and we're not going to prison because you got greedy." Webb pulled out a document. "As of 8 p.m. tonight, you've been removed as CEO by a unanimous board vote, effective immediately." Marcus stood frozen. Then Webb turned. He scanned the room. His eyes landed on Vincent. At first, there was no recognition, just a janitor in a uniform, standing near the back, head down. But Elizabeth Chen saw him too. Her eyes widened. "Oh my God," she whispered. "That's Vincent Cross." Webb looked again, really looked, and recognition crashed over his face like a wave. Vincent Cross, the founder, the man who disappeared from public life after his wife died. Webb looked at the janitor uniform, the gray hair, the exhaustion. Then he looked at Marcus, and he understood everything. "You did this to him," Webb said, his voice shaking with rage. "You tried to steal his company, and he's been right under your nose for months." Marcus's face went from red to deathly white. "You," he whispered, "you've been cleaning your office," Vincent said quietly. His voice carried to every corner of the room. 3 nights a week for 6 months. Beat. You never looked at me once." Webb turned to face Vincent, and then slowly, with profound respect, Harrison Webb, chairman of the board, stood at attention. The other 11 board members did the same, standing, not bowing, not performing, just standing in acknowledgement. The gesture rippled through the ballroom. 300 people stood, not because they were told to, but because they understood what they were witnessing. A man who'd lost everything, who'd spent 6 months invisible, who'd been thrown out like garbage, standing in a janitor uniform, still wearing his wedding ring, still fighting for what mattered. And Marcus Hale, CEO of nothing now, stood frozen, watching his own board abandon him for a janitor.